already. There you go. Poodle for Sully. And put your head on it. There you go. Good girl. Yeah.
It's approaching midday in the Peak household.
You'll feel better soon.
And time for 9-year-old Sully's medicine.
If she has a spike in seizures, we usually give her a large dose of oil. Otherwise, if we can't stop her seizures, we have to take her to hospital. If that medication doesn't work, we're in big trouble. There's nothing left for her.
It's a routine they go through every 6 hours of every day. But that's just the start of their troubles.
I've lost faith in the political system. I've lost faith in the government. I've lost faith in the medical system. And yeah, it's devastating, honestly.
For the first year of Sully's life, there was no sign of anything wrong. At 15 months, she had her first seizure. One became dozens, then hundreds, each one life-threatening. Now her only relief comes from cannabis oil, which her father says reduces the number of seizures by 90 to 95%.
She's had an enormous benefit from cannabis. It's not a cure-all for Sully. There is no cure. Cannabis does not cure. They don't even know what's wrong with her. She has no diagnosis.
For years, governments, state and federal, have been removing legal barriers to medicinal cannabis.
Medical cannabis's time has come.
This is about authorising the use of cannabis.
What we are doing is removing the missing piece.
But the products legally available aren't appropriate for Sully, and many like her, so her life-saving medicine is still being sourced from the black market.
They say that it's been legalised. It's not legalised. You can't get it no matter what you do.
To date, 137 applications from doctors to prescribe medicinal cannabis have been approved. 60 in Victoria, 43 in New South Wales and 13 in Queensland. In addition, 25 doctors have been ticked off as authorised prescribers, which means they don't need government approval for each prescription. 22 in New South Wales and 3 in Queensland. And there's been just one application for special import permission since it became available in June. The federal government insists the way has been cleared for doctors to prescribe as they see fit.
It's up to the medical professionals. It's completely their choice as to whether they prescribe or don't prescribe.
But some doctors claim that's stretching the truth.
It just seems as though there's so many obstacles and hurdles that are put in the place of GPs and specialists that it's creating an impossible situation.
Sydney GP Dr Brad Mackay says several of his patients are being denied the treatment they need because of intractable red tape.
It's been in excess of sort of 30 to 40 hours that I've put in over a 4-month period. And yeah, I talk to my GP colleagues as well, and everybody just looks at me and goes, well, why are you prescribing it? It's too difficult, it's too convoluted.
He's yet to be granted a single approval for medicinal cannabis and says the claim doctors need only fill out a 2-page form is laughable.
There is one area here for clinical justification for use of the product. There's a single line that you can put the information there about your patient. But once that's actually put into the TGA, you get a letter back which looks a little bit like this, which is asking for all of these dot points for treatment, stating why your application hasn't been accepted.
Many have actually contacted me saying that they're having trouble with the process, it's getting bogged down, and that their patients have kind of thrown their arms up and have moved back to the black market.
Justin Sinclair, a pharmacognosist who specialises in medicinal cannabis, says in some cases the evidence required doesn't exist.
There is a great paucity of evidence in the literature, at least when it comes to human clinical trials. And so it's hard to be able to sit there and say that we're open for business when indeed 70 years of prohibition of cannabis in general has been meaning that we can't collect that evidence.
And he claims more people than ever are coming to him for advice on medicinal cannabis.
I'm speaking to anywhere between 20 to 30 within a week. And doctors are also starting to contact me a lot more during this time. So I'm in patients now over the time that I've been in this space, many, many hundreds. And I would say that this is actually intensifying a little bit since the laws have actually passed because they're finding it very difficult to navigate.
We have the regulator saying it's a 1 or 2 page form and you'll get an approval in 2 or 3 days, but in practice the cases we're seeing are very different. Applicants are being asked for dossiers of information, published materials, specialist reports. It's taking a lot longer than 2 or 3 days.
Lawyer Teresa Nicoletti is now working full-time helping doctors and patients navigate through the quagmire of medicinal cannabis approvals.
The legislation, I think, is quite onerous compared to a lot of the legislation we deal with. It's the layers of regulation that are a problem, and it's also the inconsistency with which decisions are made on a case-by-case basis.
Today, she's meeting a familiar face.
Hi Steve, how are you? It's Teresa.
Good, Teresa. How's yourself?
Not too bad, thanks. And Sully?
Yeah, she's doing pretty good. A lot better than she was the other night. The medication, well, we're going to have to wean her off it. It's got a lot of side effects, but she's doing okay now.
And with the help of legal counsel, Steve says he's made more progress in 2 weeks than he did in 2 years on his own.
The legal position is that any prescriber around Australia can prescribe to a patient in Queensland as long as they're an eligible patient and they fit the prescriber class.
They're actually talking about sourcing asimilar products, so...
Oh, that's good. That's great news.
They're not there yet, but without Teresa working pro bono, Steve would have little hope of legally helping Sully.
They're already having to deal with a serious illness in their family. They're also lay people, and for them to have any understanding of the legislation is very difficult. For them to have the time to go through the legislation and work through it is very difficult. And for them to engage lawyers to represent their interest, they don't have the financial means to do that.
Governments, state and federal, make no apologies for their cautious approach, pointing out some forms of medicinal cannabis can harm developing brains and warning patients should never expose themselves to potentially dangerous black market products. The sick irony is the layers of regulation and duplication of state and federal requirements is precisely what's driving some patients into using illicit and unregulated medicines. Is the health of people like Sully being put at risk by this cautious approach?
Potentially, yes.
These are sick people. They're vomiting, they're in pain, they're having seizures. These are kids. And we're trying to create a strange situation which prevents doctors from prescribing them a drug that's less harmful than a lot of the other drugs that we use.
And so, every 6 hours of every day, Steve Peake says he's forced to continue to break the law to keep his daughter alive.
It gives her a reasonable quality of life, and nobody has the right to take that away from her.